I'm Jack Ames. Welcome. I'm the founder and director of Defend Life. You can find out more about our organization by going to defendlife.org. First of all, I'd like to say that we're grateful to Almighty God for giving us great victory. Not only resulted in a substantial settlement, most of which, by the way, went to the lawyers, and they deserve every dollar they get, but most importantly, because it's our group, Defend Life, and other groups now have a clear mandate to do what we were doing back on August 1st, August 2nd, 2008, showing graphic images. That's what this ruling is all about. So there's a real precedent value to this ruling. The good news is that the First Amendment and Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, of the Bill of Rights, still stands here in Maryland. And it's a great testimonial to the wisdom of our founding fathers. That's the really good news. And we intend to exercise our First Amendment rights, because if we don't exercise them, we lose them. So again, this year, July 23rd through July 27th, we'll be doing our 12th annual Maryland Right to Life, Defend Life, Face the Truth Tour. And we'll be going to many of those same locations that we've gone to in the past, including Bel Air, Maryland, where 18 of us were illegally arrested back on August 1st, 2008. Now, we would like to offer our resources as Defend Life to the Maryland State Police and the state of Maryland, so that heinous things like this can never happen, not only to us, Defend Life, but to other groups, any other groups who are out there exercising their First Amendment rights. So we're going to be writing a letter to the superintendent offering our resources to him. We have some wonderful ideas. They're all pro bono, by the way, just like our wonderful lawyers were pro bono to us. Now, I'd like to, before we get to the other speakers, I'd like to mention some of the persons who were truly heroes in our case. I call them saints, because they did saintly things. And they include the speakers you see off to your right. And I'm just going to turn this so I can read it myself. The first person I'd like to recognize is Sheriff Jesse Bain. Now, he's the sheriff of Harford County. What role did he play? He played a very important role, and this hasn't been reported. After we were arrested, all 18 of us, guess what? Now you have to transport the arrestees. All the young ladies, all of whom were teenagers, were transported by police cruiser. But they needed a paddy wagon to transport the male arrestees. So they summoned one from Harford County, but somehow Jesse Bain smelled a rat, knew maybe there was something illegal going on here, and he actually called back his paddy wagon. So the paddy wagons that actually took us to the Bel Air barracks were all the way from Baltimore County. They had to go all the way from Baltimore County up to Bel Air. So he's a real hero. Another person I'd like to recognize, we don't know his name, but Governor O'Malley should give him a special commendation, because while we were incarcerated, all 18 of us, in this concrete block cells about 12 by 12, the males and females were adjacent to each other, and it was so bad in there that if you breathed, you could hear yourself breathing. And if more than one person talked at the same time, the reverberations were painful to the ears. But there was a trooper outside in the hallway, and he walked by and he said, "Don't worry, all these charges will be dropped." We needed to hear that at that time, because here I had organized this. I was the one who said, I think we should go 4 miles up the road after we were kicked off the original location at 24 and 924. We'll go up into the town of Bel Air, and if we have any police to deal with, it's going to be the town of Bel Air police, not the Maryland State Police. Of course, I was wrong. But now, all of a sudden, all these teenagers are being arrested, and they're from all over the country, as far away as New Mexico, Iowa, and so forth. And now I'm thinking, gosh, how are they going to get home the next day? They're in jail. What are their parents going to say? Could this be the end of our organization, Defend Life? All these things were running through my mind. So we needed to hear that from that anonymous trooper, whoever that might be. And Governor O'Malley should figure out who that was and give him a special commendation. That meant so much to us. Now the next person who was a real hero was Steve Peruka, an attorney who, when he found out we had been arrested, the 18 of us, came up all the way from Anne Arundel County to Harford County and stayed there all night with another attorney, Scott Whiteman. And he actually tried to get in and act as our attorney, but he was rebuffed. But we really praise him for being there all night and interviewing each one of us as we were released the following morning from the Harford County Detention Center. Steve Peruka. Next person is Joe Casserly, the state's attorney of Harford County. Now, he wasn't on duty. He was on vacation when all this happened. Had he been there, chances are the arrest never would have happened. But when he found out what had happened, he was livid. He called over to the Harford County Detention Center and said, "Release those people immediately." He's a real hero. He's a Vietnam vet, paralyzed from the waist down. And he was also the same person who 11 days later dropped the charges against all 18 of us. A real hero. Lieutenant Douglas Zeller was commander of the Bel Air Barrack. Now, he was basically a good man, but he was a paper shuffler, and he really wasn't involved much in the day-to-day operations. But when he was deposed 2 years later, what Commander Zeller said was, "If I knew then, August 1st, 2008, what I know now, December 2010, these arrests never would have happened." So to my way of thinking, Douglas Zeller is a hero. And then we have Rob McCord, who's the county attorney of Harford County. We actually sued Harford County because of something that happened. And when Rob McCord saw how the depositions were going, he decided to settle. A real good man. I was so impressed by Rob McCord. There's a lot of good people in Harford County. God bless them. He's one of them. And then there was people like Tom Brecka, who you'll be hearing from shortly, of the Thomas More Law Society. And he was very heroic in what he did in getting to the bottom of what really happened, doing the FOIA to find out the radio and radio transmissions that really revealed what a comedy of errors this was. Thanks to Tom Brecka, who you'll be hearing from shortly. And he'll be talking about not the heckler's veto and the precedent-setting nature of this settlement. And then there's Matt Pavla, former head of the Christian Legal Society here in Maryland, who was very much involved in our case as well. By the way, Tom Brecka is the head of the Thomas More Legal Society, and he's the only attorney in America who's taken the same client to the Supreme Court, not once, not twice, but 3 times for the same case, Nall versus Scheidler. And then there was Judge Bennett. Judge Bennett was the one who, in U.S. District Court Judge Richard Bennett, who basically ruled in a summary judgment that Defend Life had won. And the only thing that would be determined would be the amount of the damages. A really good man. And we're thankful to all of these people and many more who are not named here. Now, I'd like to read a short statement from Congressman Andy Harris before we introduce the remainder of the speakers. Congressman Andy Harris says, "I am sorry I could not be here personally with you today at the press conference, but I want to express my thanks to Defend Life for standing up for the First Amendment rights of Americans. This victory in the courtroom was indeed a victory for everyone. A disturbing trend we are all witnessing in today's is to attempt to stifle opinions that are politically incorrect or contrary to what the government considers acceptable. We need every American to stand up for our rights and our freedoms." That's Congressman Andy Harris. Now I'd like to mention the next speakers. Tom Brecka will be the first. He'll introduce himself. Then we're going to have Angela Swagler. When these arrests occurred, it was right after she graduated from high school. She's a brilliant young lady. She intends to pursue a career in law, and she speaks Latin and Greek fluently. She was one of the 18 arrestees back on August 1st of 2008. And then our final speaker will be Kurt Linneman of CBR Maryland, and he's going to talk about a couple of cases that are very similar to ours. So, Tom Brecka. Oh, by the way, we'll have questions and answers after Kurt Lindman's talk.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jack. My name is Tom Brecka. I'm the President and Chief Counsel of a national public interest law firm, the Thomas More Society, based in Chicago. We were honored to participate as counsel for Defend Life, a longtime client of ours, although from a distance, along with Alliance Defense Fund, another major... Is this working? We were honored to act as co-counsel for Defend Life and all these arrestees with Alliance Defense Fund, based in Phoenix, Arizona, and American Catholic Lawyers Association, Chris Ferrara, based in New Jersey. This is not an occasion to gloat about a victory over the Maryland State Police. It is rather an occasion to commend them for recognizing the fundamental legal principles at stake in this litigation, and the beginning of what we hope to be a cooperative partnership between the pro-life community in Maryland and D.C. with the Maryland State Police in enforcing, respecting, and protecting the rights of protesters to exercise their fundamental First Amendment rights. Without going into any great detail, the highlights of a settlement that was reached would include that neither the Maryland State Police or any member thereof will enforce disturbing the peace or disorderly conduct statutes or ordinances or any alleged permit requirements to restrict peaceful picketing, lawful assembly, advocacy on the part of groups like Defend Life and other pro-life protesters. The Maryland State Police will notify the Defend Life or other protesters if they're on public property and peaceably engaging in advocacy, if the police determine it's somehow unsafe or illegal for them to continue. And the Maryland State Police will not restrict speech, including speech employing images of aborted human babies, solely based on the reactions of viewers or motorists who may find that display offensive. That's a key part of this lawsuit and the settlement, is indeed that the content of speech is not a lawful basis for regulating it unless it's obscene, it's an inducement, incitement to imminent lawless action, or a few other very, very limited exceptions. The content of speech is protected against retaliation against the speaker. The duty of law enforcement is to protect the speaker and the exercise of that free expression. That harkens back to the fact that this country was founded as an act of rebellion. And we need to remind ourselves that freedom to express your opposition to what you deem a grave evil is essential to our society's capacity to renew itself, to confront and correct actual social evils. The Maryland State Police further are going to implement a training program within 120 days of the settlement, and that time is now running, and the Plaintiffs' Counsel will have the opportunity to review and consult with them about the content of that training program. There are lawyers in the state of Maryland. The Institute on the Constitution is one of those groups that engages in education on civil rights, civil liberties. We are going to recommend that the state police include them and consult with them before settling on this training program. This is a major step not only in Maryland but nationally. Increasingly, the courts are recognizing that no matter how some deem pro-life protest politically incorrect, it is indeed an exercise of fundamental, pristine First Amendment rights, deserves and indeed now increasingly receives the kind of court protection required. This case is as important as the Navi Scheidler case that we took up to the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times. When law enforcement agrees, as have the Maryland State Police, without having to go through and obtain a coercive court order, that is a major, major development. Indeed, the Wyoming Supreme Court just last week upheld the use of fetal imagery. Why? Because concrete images are absolutely indispensable for society to recognize social evils. We don't recommend that tactic be used all the time. It should be used sparingly and with warnings. That was the case here with Defend Life. But that tactic must be protected as a matter of our fundamental liberties. There was a case in the city where I grew up and where I live now, Chicago, involving a young African-American named Emmett Till. Many of you may remember the case. I lived through it. Emmett was a teenager who went down to visit relatives in the South, and he was a victim of a Jim Crow murder. His mother in Chicago decided that, as gruesome as the remains were, the casket should remain open. And 7,000 people passed by that open casket on the south side of Chicago. The effect was electrifying. Jet magazine published the photo intact and circulated it nationally. And a book has just been published a couple years ago by Emmett Till's mother, and Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, wrote the foreword to that book. And Jesse Jackson quoted none other than Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks, you may remember, didn't give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, starting the Montgomery bus boycott that is credited with sparking the modern civil rights movement. Jesse Jackson quoted Miss Parks, and she said, "You know, I was about to give up my seat and move to the back of the bus, and then I thought of Emmett Till." And that tells you how significant, how crucial it is that as a society we learn to face up and confront our social evils, don't repress them, don't suppress them. We're gratified that the Maryland State Police have joined us in recognizing that principle and will help enforce it from here on. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angela Swagler. When the arrest occurred, I had just graduated from high school and was only 18 years old. I participated in Face the Truth Tour because I wished to bear witness for those who could not speak for themselves. I knew in my heart that what I was doing was right and that I was protected by the First Amendment. Despite this, the events of August 1st, 2008 happened. It was a traumatic experience in its own right, and I would never want anyone, women in particular, to experience the same horrors that I did, of getting shackled, imprisoned, and invasively strip-searched twice. The case has ended on a positive note, though, and I'm so grateful for the settlement and the outcome of the case. I'm grateful that this will help everyone in the state of Maryland and the Maryland State Police officers in regards to protecting the First Amendment. After all this, I want the Maryland State Police officers to know that I forgive them. Thank you.
That was beautiful. My name is Kurt Lindemann, and I'm the director of CBR Maryland, which is the regional office of the International Pro-Life Group, the Center for Bioethical Reform, or CBR. I'm here today to applaud the recent federal court ruling upholding the First Amendment rights of the 18 members of Defend Life. Through this victory, our rights as citizens to assemble and to freedom of speech was upheld, and this is no small victory. Unfortunately, what Defend Life experienced at the hands of the Bel Air Police Department and the Maryland State Police is not an isolated violation of our rights. Just 1 month ago, the Baltimore County Police Department attempted to limit the First Amendment rights of members of my organization, CBR, Maryland, as we were demonstrating outside of Lock Raven High School. Prior to that, in 2009, the Wilmington, Delaware Police Department attempted to limit our First Amendment rights by censoring the use of graphic images of aborted babies while demonstrating outside Planned Parenthood in Wilmington, Delaware. In response to this violation through the ACLU, we brought suit against the Wilmington Police Department. They, like the Maryland State Police, settled out of court. As part of the settlement, they, once again, like the Maryland State Police, agreed to conduct annual First Amendment rights training for all law enforcement officers. So, in victory, we must be fearless, we must fiercely move forward, utilizing our First Amendment rights as desired, and willing to defend them when necessary. Thank you.
That is all the official comments. Y'all can ask questions of any participant that spoke today.
Does anybody have any questions?
Was Governor O'Malley cooperative?
It's just questions from the media. But as far as we know, Governor O'Malley was not involved in the case except for signing on to the $385,000 settlement without comment.
Can I just ask you again, what did you say about Sheriff Jesse Bain that he did?
Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry, no repeat.
When we were arrested, all 18 of us, back on August 1st, 2008 in Bel Air, Maryland, along Route 24. Now, it's easy enough to arrest. They put you in handcuffs, they tell you to go over and get against the guardrail, and then they have to transport you. Well, all the young ladies like Angela were transported in state police cruisers or town of Bel Air police cruisers. But the males just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. So we must have been sitting against the guardrail for what seemed like 2 hours. And it was a hot day, we were tired, this was the last stop. We hadn't eaten since about noon. And where were the paddy wagons that were going to transport us to the jail? Well, what we later found out, and then all of a sudden, about 2.5 hours later, here comes a paddy wagon from Baltimore County. Well, that seems strange, and I know what a Baltimore County paddy wagon looks like because I recognize the emblem, because I live here in Baltimore County. Well, what we later found out from the Freedom of Information Act, getting the recordings of both the telephone conversations and the radio conversations, is that paddy wagons from Harford County were on the way, but suddenly they were pulled back. Why were they pulled back? Because obviously you have good people like Sheriff Jesse Bain who sensed there was something not completely legal about these arrests, and he didn't want Harford County to be involved. So he was actually pulled back, and we know that for a fact from the recordings.
Okay.
Any other questions? While I'm waiting for another question, I'd just like to say, again, we're very grateful for this settlement. Very thankful to Almighty God, thankful to all the people who participated, thankful to the Maryland State Police who cooperated in the settlement. And we really look forward to getting on with our mission. And our mission is to make abortion not only illegal in America, but unthinkable. Just like 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, 150 years ago, slavery was the norm. And now nobody would even, not only is slavery illegal, it's unthinkable. Well, 50 or 100 years from now, abortion will not only be illegal, it will be unthinkable. We have to get back to that. If we don't stop abortion in America, abortion will be the end of America.
Can we ask the student to...
Angela.
Yes.
And Angela, what did you think then and now about state troopers, and your beliefs in what they do and in your interactions with them?
Okay. So the question was what I think then and now of state troopers. So at the time, the experience just seemed so unreal to me. I was just confused as what was happening because what I believed we were doing everything according to the law. So I was just surprised at the reaction of the state troopers, but overall they treated me kindly, and I know that a number of them were just doing their job, so I do not have a negative opinion of state troopers, especially since the settlement worked out so well, and they were very understanding about it. Any other questions?
Where are you from?
I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And she's a senior at Christendom College.
She's going to go to law school next year, right, Angela?
Hopefully.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Anyway, we'll be available for one-on-one comments immediately afterwards. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful day.